All right, hello again out there in internet land. As promised, I'm back. I am the jazz and blues audiophile, and I am back to present to you a special album, an album that holds a special place in my heart. Because through this album, this is through the discovery of this album that I discovered one of the finest artists in jazz, the regretted Jimmy Smith, the late, great Jimmy Smith, who passed away in 2005. Through Jimmy Smith, I was introduced to the jazz organ. And it goes without saying that Smith is quite an important name in the history of the Ambin B3 organ, as he pretty much single-handedly did more to popularize that instrument in the 50s than any other organ player before or after him. Of course, before Smith, there was, Fats Waller, Count Basie, Wild Bill Davis, I believe also Bill Dodgett, and a couple others that were playing the organ, but none of them were playing in the style that Smith created. And he was originally formed on piano. He started out on piano, and then after a year of practicing in a warehouse on a Hammond B3, he came out swinging on that instrument and started playing in different jazz clubs and clubs around the United States, and became very, very popular. And it's one of those clubs that the late great Alfred Lyon, co-founder of Blue Note Records, discovered him, heard him, and immediately offered him a recording contract with the famous Blue Note Records label, legendary Blue Note Records label, I should say. So Smith was under contract from 1956 to 1962 with the Blue Note record labels, and he produced quite a number of albums. I don't remember exactly how many. I think over 40 albums in an 8-year period for Blue Note, and some of those albums are legendary. They're absolute classics in jazz. We'll talk about his Blue Note recordings later on in another program. But in this program, in this special presentation, because I'm going to focus only on one album, just one album of Jimmy Smith. And this is the one I've been talking about that introduced me to him way back in my early days of discovering jazz. And I'm talking about this album right here. We're talking about Any Number Can Win, a soundtrack. I thought it was, anyway, when I discovered it, I thought it was a soundtrack to a famous MGM movie of the same name called Any Number Can Win. But I found out it was not a soundtrack to the movie. It was actually just the title track, Any Number Can Win, was the generic song for the movie when the movie begins. And Smith plays an adaptation of this song on this record. This record is a mixed album. It's a big band album because Smith plays a few numbers accompanied by the Oliver Nelson big band, and it's also got some numbers where he's on trio, and a small trio setting with Kenny Burrell, Mel Lewis at the drums, and some background singers. This is a period when Jimmy Smith moved over to Verve after leaving Blue Note. He signed up with Verve in 1962. And during his Verve years, he went more into sort of a little bit of a crossover genre for the time. He put a little bit more soul, rhythm and blues, and a little bit of pop into his music. And he crossed over, and some of his records actually were put on 45, were issued as singles, released as singles, and made the top 100 R&B charts of the time. And that's why my mother and her sister, I forget if it was her sister, my aunt, or my mother that bought this album in vinyl format, an original pressing of 1963. And they just loved the title track, Any Number Can Win. It's a track that you can dance to. So this is really an album that you can say it's party jazz. It's jazz to create really a party atmosphere, a party mood. If you listen to the title track of this record and you don't want to move, well, there's something wrong with you. This is just a very swinging, very hard driving album all the way through. It's got some relaxed, softer numbers, but a lot of numbers are here are really hard swinging, hard driving, big band and organ numbers. And Smith just shines on this recording. He shines. He's at the top of his form. He's more popular than ever in 1963 when this is recorded. And he decided to go in the studios and make this album. And it was a couple of numbers on this album actually were, as I said, were hits on the charts. So that being said, what is this all about? This Any Number Can Win album? Well, first of all, it's inspired by a movie, MGM movie released in 1963 called Any Number Can Win, but that's the English title. The original movie, it's actually a French movie produced in France, and the actual title, the French title, is called Mélodie en sous-sol, and it stars the two great French cinema legends, Alain Delon and Jean Gabin. Alain Delon, who's still with us today, and Jean Gabin, who passed away quite a few years ago. And it's a heist movie. It's basically a gangster that's released from prison, and before completely retiring from crime, he wants to pull off one last big heist by robbing a casino, and then he wants to retire on that money. But things are going to go not quite the way he expected, and there's going to be some twists and turns. And the ending of this movie is just absolutely, it's a classic. I mean, it's a classic, very, how should I say, it's a very special ending. You know, you don't expect it, and it ends in a funny kind of a way, but it's really, really good movie. I highly recommend the movie. And you can even hear the title track, Any Number Can Win, the generic song at the beginning of the movie. You can type on YouTube if you want to go and look at it, listen to it. From the movie, you type Any Number Can Win, theme song from the movie, original theme song by Michel Magne. So the composer was Michel Magne, who's basically a French film music composer. And he's the one who composed the melody to this film. Now, I'll tell you, it's very hard to recognize the original and the adaptation that Jimmy Smith plays on this album. It's almost unrecognizable. It's very, very much transformed, and it really, the Oliver Nelson Big Band and Jimmy Smith have really made it their own in this kind of arrangement. But you can still recognize some hints of it in the original French arrangement of it that you can listen to, as I said, on YouTube if you're interested. Now, all these numbers, you know, you buy some records sometimes and you say, oh, I like one or two pieces on it, but the other ones, I don't really care for them. You know, they're not all that good. Well, this record is different. This CD or vinyl, it's all the numbers. There's only 10 numbers on it. It's not a very long album. It's just a little bit over 30-some minutes. But every single track on this album is good. Every single track is just terrific jazz, excellent jazz playing, excellent music altogether. There's no regrets when you buy this album. I mean, the whole album is highly listenable. It's all good. And I highly recommend this album, even if you're not into jazz. Of course, if you're into jazz, you already probably know about this album. You probably have heard it before, listened to it, either enjoy it or it's not one of your favorites. Me, it's one of my favorites. But if you're not into jazz and you want to discover some new music, you want to discover Jimmy Smith in particular, this is a very good starting point, because this is what I would call an easy access jazz album. Some jazz is easier to access. You need a little bit more getting used to and some preparation in order to appreciate certain styles of jazz, which are a little bit more intricate, a little more sonically complicated, but not this one. This one is an easy access album, and I highly recommend that you go out and buy it and listen to it. But first of all, you can listen to it, of course, free of charge on YouTube. You just punch Any Number Can Win, Jimmy Smith, and you'll find all the tracks, the 10 tracks of this album, free for streaming on YouTube, so you can have a listen. And if you enjoy it, then I encourage you, go out and buy this album. The CD version, or I don't know if it's available in vinyl. I used to own the original vinyl number that used to belong to my mother, and so I had a very scratched 1963 issue of it, but the sound was absolutely terrific. Which brings me to talk about the uh, production of this album and the sound. Because, hey, I'm a jazz and blues audiophile, so I like to listen to stuff that's got great sounding music. So that means that the sound take, the recording, was a really good take. It was a good recording. It was really well made. And this album, well, hats off to Verve Records for this reissue. They put it out in 22-bit, 96 kilohertz resolution, and it sounds absolutely great. The sound is well balanced. The remixing engineer that issued this on CD did a terrific job. I can compare from memory with the original, vinyl that I used to own. I would say that it's not quite as good as the original vinyl, because after all, you have to realize one thing: when you own an original pressing, an original issue of an album, whatever format it might have come out on, when you own an actual original pressing of the year it was released, you own usually the best sounding copy there is out there. It's just unbeatable. So the record, the pressing, the original pressing that I used to have was just, in my opinion, the best sounding version. But this CD comes awfully close. It's very close. It sounds extremely nice, extremely well done. There were 3 engineers involved in this recording session: Phil Ramone, Phil Macy, and the legendary Rudy Van Gelder. And it was recorded at Van Gelder Studios. And I don't know if all 3 were working together on this at the same time, or if they did separate sound takes or whatever. But the sound is absolutely beautiful sound. On every number in this CD, the sound is well balanced. The dynamics, the harmonics, the dynamic range, everything comes through beautifully. You can hear all the intricate details of the instruments playing in the background, behind the organ. And the organ is wonderfully recorded, and especially on the slow numbers. Especially, there's one number I was listening to just earlier today before doing this video. I was listening to the tune called Ruby on this record. And man, if you listen to that on a good hi-fi system, the sound of that organ, the sound take, is absolutely perfect. It's big, it's full, it comes at you, and it just completely envelops you with this huge, heavy organ, Hammond B3 organ sound. And it's just very well done. Just very well done. I said your ears will be happy when you hear the good sound quality on this excellent recording. So that was my little bit on this record, Jimmy Smith, Any Number Can Win. I encourage you to go and get the movie if you can. It's available. It's an MGM release, so it's available in DVD somewhere. You can order it on Amazon or whatever. I own it. It's an excellent movie, and it does have a jazz soundtrack all the way through. And then get yourself this album. Go take a listen to this on YouTube right now. Any Number Can Win, Jimmy Smith. And let me know what you think about it in the comment section below. If you like this video, give us a like. And if you want to subscribe to my channel, go ahead and subscribe. Until the next program, which will feature another jazz artist and another album or two, just remember, jazz on. And we'll talk to you later.